should say we've received all the documentation, obviously, and seen that. Just waiting for the. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're now on air, or whatever the term is. I'm Councillor Philip Davis. I'll be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. If you could all mute your microphones for the moment so that this assists the sound quality while I talk about procedure. And also, if you could please turn off your cameras, with the exception of committee members, unless you're the person speaking. This again will help us with the bandwidth. Committee members will normally have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. If you could make sure you've got your mobile phones on silent, etc., and you're somewhere where you won't be disturbed, that will help the process. It's obviously important, given the meetings are online, that everybody's able to hear me, and also the other persons attending. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these types of meetings. This is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website so that the general public can view it. And the formal agenda is as follows. Notice of recording webcast. I advise the meeting to note that this meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items. 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosure of pecuniary interest is declared, the member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Notification of nominee members. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Morrell, and Councillor Wagg is substituting today. So can I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of Sports Co. 24 Wishaw Lane, Minworth, Sutton Coldfield, B769AR. As I said previously, I'm Councillor Philip Davis. I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee A. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mary Locke and Councillor Penny Wagg. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: the licensing officer, Mr. Bhupinder Nandra, the committee manager, Miss Katie Townsend, and the committee lawyer, Ms. Joanne Swampillar. And can I now ask the external participants to identify themselves? Firstly, the applicant, Mr. Cronin. If you could just confirm you're here.
Yes, thank you, Chair. David Cronin here.
Okay, thank you. And I think Mr. Daly is going to also be speaking for the application. Mr. Daly.
Good morning, Chair.
Okay, thank you. As I said, Mr. Daly, I'll come to you as sort of lead-in, if that's okay. And next, those making representations. I understand Mrs. Fox is here. Mrs. Fox?
Yes, I'm here, Mrs. Fox, Minworth resident.
Thank you very much. Okay, I can't see anybody else attending to make representations. We have read the written representations received. Is there anybody else attending making representations? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll come to you in due course. I think it's probably directed to you, Mrs. Fox. Is there any part of your representation or the whole that you wish to withdraw?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So again, a bit more about procedure. I'll assume everybody attending has read and understood the Licensing Committee procedural rules sent out with the notice of hearing. Given the nature of today's proceedings online, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect that fact. But I want to assure everyone that such amendments will not impact on the party's right to a fair hearing. We use the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate as an additional backup. I think everybody's very familiar with that these days, so I won't go into detail about that. We also use it to record attendance. So if I could ask you to use the chat function now, you go to chat and just put in your name. That also helps us record the attendance today. So I'm going to put in my details, and then we'll be able to move on with the proceedings. Okay, there we are. I think that's done that. Okay, thank you very much for that. And if we get the main screen working again, this takes a bit of time. This. There we are. Okay, thank you. You can communicate via the normal way by speaking up. Well, the chat function is there as a backup, and the committee manager will be monitoring that if there's any communications issues. I don't think anyone is on audio telephone today, so we don't have that complication. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your cameras off unless you're the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth which cause difficulty with the sound, I may, at my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. At this point, I normally ask those persons making representations if there are any preliminary points. This is about procedure and so on. If you have any issues you need to raise on that. Mr. Daly?
Good morning, Chair. I've no comments to make on procedure or anything.
Okay. Mrs. Fox?
Not for me, thank you.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so on procedure, firstly, I'm going to ask the licensing officer, Mr. Nandra, to present his report. Then the applicant, Mr. Cronin, led by Mr. Daly, will be asked to present their case. And we're asking that that's kept to around 20 minutes. Then those making representations, Mrs. Fox in this case, will be invited to make their case. And again, you've got 20 minutes if you wish to use that, Mrs. Fox. So if I could ask all parties to speak slowly and clearly, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes and the meeting is being live streamed. And then again, if it's time for someone else to speak, if you could mute your microphone, we find that assists in terms of avoiding any technical issues. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representation will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Occasionally, it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting while members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We'll then return to the meeting. If at any time the live stream being broadcast on the Council's website fails, I'll ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until we can restore it. And if at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I'll ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. Then at the conclusion of the hearing, I'll invite all parties to make a brief closing submission, around 5 minutes in duration. And no decision will, of course, be taken until all the evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting so that we can determine the decision. We'll go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that members need to clarify any point, you'll be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. Notification of the determination of the application will be sent out to all parties within 5 days. Okay, so that's the process. So what I'd like to do now is to go to Mr. Nandra, the licensing officer, and ask him to present his report. Mr. Nandra.
Thank you, Chair. David Cronin applied on the 29th of July 2022 for the grant of a premises licence for Sports Co 24 Wishaw Lane, Minworth, Sutton Coldfield, B76 9AR. The purpose of the report is to consider representations that have been made in respect of an application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 12 midday until 11 p.m. Monday to Sunday. The premises is to remain open to the public from 12 midday until 11:30 p.m. Monday to Sunday. Representations have been received from other persons which are attached at Appendices 1 to 5. The application is attached at Appendix 6. Conditions have been agreed with West Midlands Police and the applicant, which are attached at Appendix 7, and the site location plans are attached at Appendix 8. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the license in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the license subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the license any other licensable activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the license as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nandra. Okay, so we now do move to Mr. Daly. Mr. Daly and Mr. Cronin, you can now make your presentation to the committee in favour of the application. Mr. Daly.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'm the agent who's assisting Mr. Cronin in relation to this application, and I do have a licensing consultancy company, but I'm also an event manager for a grassroots football club in Essex. So there's some background that myself and Mr. Cronin share, and I wouldn't presume that anyone sitting on the committee knows all the little workings of how a grassroots football club operates. But Mr. Cronin's Sports Go in R1 is what is called an FA Charter status club. And just to address a few of the concerns around that initial thing about will the sale of alcohol impact on the licensing objectives at the premises? The primary concern would probably be, well, if there's young kids in and around that, is there a risk there? So dealing with that aspect and would that be an issue? The club itself has also had charity status in 2016 and is an FA Charter Standard Club. In order to get FA Charter Standard Club status, you need to go above and beyond what an ordinary football club would provide. So the current guidance from the FA in terms of what is required. So first of all, you need to have a club welfare officer, and they have to have an in-date advanced DBS, Disclosure and Barring Service certificate, to say that they have no relevant criminal history. You need a safeguarding for committee members. You need to have attended the Safeguarding Children workshop. You must have attended the welfare officer workshop. In addition to that, the youth teams must have their secretary, club welfare officer, chairperson and treasurer. They also have to have the FA Safeguarding Committee members online course. Then coaches need to have in-date DBSs. They also need to have completed the Safeguarding Children workshop. They would have an expectation that at least a manager or coach of a youth team also has an FA Level 1 course and has completed the Safeguarding Children workshop, and that in the interim they would complete the FA Safeguarding for All. The Safeguarding course itself deals with all aspects of how to keep children safe, how to create a safe environment, how to create an environment that's suitable for children to be around. There's a lot of focus now from the FA in terms of how you run your football club and how you make sure that the environment you create within that football club is a suitable environment. And that includes having a welfare officer on site, committee members taking an active involvement in all the teams, putting elements such as respect barriers, which keep a distance from parents to the pitch to make sure that the kids are safe. So when we look at will alcohol or the addition of alcohol to what is essentially a football club make a difference to that? Well, it won't, because the hours that have been requested start at 12 o'clock and are until 10 o'clock is what we may be considering further down the line. The majority of the children's matches are out of the way on a Saturday and Sunday morning, so the alcohol won't be sold in around those times. Those parents will have dispersed, and the facility for the sale of alcohol is mainly to accommodate adult teams and vets teams for travelling supporters. I noticed from some of the representations there's a concern that this will turn into another pub in the town. There's no proposal for that to do that. It is simply going to be to accommodate those teams, away teams, their parents and members, and on the occasions during the summer, those end of year celebrations. Potentially some other occasions, such as if England do well in the World Cup, the clubhouse may be used. But you've probably seen from the plans, there is no great facility there. It's a small kitchen, it's a small function room. It's not going to be open 24/7. And as has been pointed out in the representations, I'll just address the planning issue now, which has been addressed in the representations. I'm not sure how long you guys have sat on the committee, but there was a case in 2006 which involved a decision made by the Birmingham Licensing Subcommittee, and it was Blackwood for Mitchells and Butlers, who had a case that involved planning. Now, the committee at the time, I don't know if it was yourselves, it went all the way to the High Court, and it revolved around, were the committee right to grant the license even though there was no planning permission in place? The High Court judge said yes, they were, because the two of them are separate regimes. They complement each other, but a decision about a Licensing Act application, whilst the planning is relevant, is also not a consideration, and that should be considered at a planning committee. Now, I know that the representations from Ms Fox bring the planning into it, but from Mr Cronin, a planning application is pending. And also there is the 28-day exemption under the Town and Country Planning Act, which applies to any premises, so that the plan and use of the premises potentially couldn't apply for 28 days of the year if he notifies.
Just say, Mr Daly, we understand the distinction between the licensing and the planning, and we won't be considering planning issues. That is not our remit. So, but thank you for giving us that history. That was useful.
Thank you, Chair. And then the other aspect was the Section 182 guidance in terms of the need of another premises within the town. At 14.19, it does address that need is not a concern, and that is also a planning concern. I think what's best is if I introduce Mr Cronin. He's going to be the licence holder, he's the chairman, and he's the man who's going to be on site, who is responsible for what will happen and how he will make sure that if a licence is granted, that he will make sure that things are running in the proper order. If I may, Mr Cronin.
Thank you, Mr Daly. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's David Cronin. I have been chairman of Sportsco Football Club since 2006. I've been a chair of governors in a primary school for over 12 years and currently work in education. So safeguarding and the aspects of looking after young children is very key to my role on a daily basis. As Mr Daly has alluded to, Sportsco's got 25 teams, of which 15 play out of Wishaw Lane, and they're mainly small-sided football teams. We're a non-profit organisation, and it's key for us to make sure that our charity status remains in its entirety throughout the club. We will not do anything that jeopardises the charity status for our children and or the FA Charter Standard mark. We have adopted the FA's safeguarding policy, which can be seen from our website, and we're open to scrutinies every weekend, every training session from the local authorities and the football authorities to come and inspect our managers and coaches, as happened last year. They come unannounced from the affiliated Birmingham County FA. They walk up and they ask for names, date of births and addresses, and they verify the information that they have on the FA's whole game system, which we have to manage on a daily basis. As Mr Daly alluded to, all our coaches are FA Level 1 qualified, and we have to make sure that there's a welfare officer that validates their DBS application as and when that's been put on the system. In terms of why we applied for an alcoholic licence, or we're looking to approve an alcoholic licence with yourselves, is that last year and through COVID, the club has made a financial loss of up to £9,000. Now, we could increase the subscriptions to our parents and carers, but within the current climate, we felt as though if we had a drinks licence, we could at least sell some alcohol during the day when people are there in the afternoons on a Saturday afternoons, which is a adults senior team, so adults open age team that would be there from 2 till 5:30. The sustainability of the club, as I said, coming into the current economic climate, is something that I'm very keen to make sure that the club survives. It's been going since 1999, and there are certain families within the club, single parent families, people on free school meals, that we have to actually fund the subscriptions for those people. The intention of the drinks licence, whilst I couldn't do it on the application initially, is to make everybody aware on this Teams call that the club won't be open 24/7. As an example, we're now coming into the winter season where the dark nights are drawing in and there will be nobody training at those venues. So as chairman of the club, I envisage that nobody will be operating any sort of meetings, sorry, not meetings, any sort of like facilities within that room to be able to sell alcoholic drinks. We will sell it. We'll be having drinks disposed into plastic disposable cups. Again, from a safeguarding perspective, what I don't want is glasses and broken bottles out on the fields. I know Mrs. Fox has done a job in going around and picking up the litter, but the intention is that we have, sorry, not the intention, we already have a team such as myself that go around and do a litter pick. We are conscious of the neighbours and we work with some of the community already. Some people have been in over the last weekend where we invited them in to come and look at the facilities, because from the outside it looks as though the club can contain a huge bar. There are no facilities, if you care to look at the drawings, for us to be able to store draft beer. It all will be bottles and cans, and as I said, it will be disposed in plastic disposable cups. We're talking with many people in the community at the moment. We have input from Wishaw WI, Women's Institute. They're currently using the venue on the second Monday in the month to carry out their activities. We carried out a sports day on behalf of a fostering care agency, and we're now working with the Minworth Community Hub, a Deborah Warner, I think it is, to make sure that they can come and use the facilities for things such as meetings. I think my only other point would be that, as I said, you know, we are looking to, it's a shame people can't come to the venue because you will see that it's not a very big site. The sales of alcohol will be primarily there, as Mr. Daly said, during presentation evenings and anything else to do with England and World Cups, European Cups, Cup finals, those type of events. It's not a very big room. It's 52 square metres in size, and therefore that gives us a restriction on numbers that can go in there. So when we talk about noisy taxis and noisy people leaving the venue, there won't be a huge amount of people. It's not going to be in direct competition of the public houses that's in the location or even the social club. So all in all, Chair, I think that's what I'd like to wrap up on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cronin. We've got some questions. Mr. Daly, though, is that your main submission then, Mr. Daly?
Yes, Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just go to members to see if we have any questions then. Councillor Wagg? You're on mute, Councillor Wagg.
No, I've got no questions at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Locke?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and I think you've answered my questions there. So, okay, we've no questions then, Mr. Daly. So thank you very much to you and Mr. Cronin for that. You'll get a chance to sum up at the end for 5 minutes. So I'd now like to move on to the objections to Mrs. Fox. Mrs. Fox, you've got a similar amount of time to speak to the committee, and then there will be questions after that, if we wish. Mrs. Fox.
Hello, thank you. So I've got a few points I wanted to make. On safety, I don't feel that the site, the entrance to the site is laid out in a safe manner. So I know we're not covering planning issues here, but when the planning permission was put in, one of the safety requirements was that there should be visibility displays, a pedestrian entrance and cycle entrance with visibility displays because it leads straight out onto the road. That hasn't been built. There's only a driveway used by cars going in. And then if you want to walk onto the site, you pretty much have to scramble through a hedge David Cronin said it's a shame the local community aren't able to visit, but that's probably because there's a massive, great big metal fence around the whole perimeter of the site with danger signs on it, which is only open when the football club's in use. And then it's only open to allow cars to go backwards and forwards. There's no safe pedestrian way. And I think that would pose a danger to anyone walking in and out of the site, particularly children, because they'd have to go on the driveway used by cars. There isn't a pedestrian walkway. There's no pavement. There's no safe pedestrian walkway except for scrambling over a muddy path through a hedge, which I included in my photographs. And personally, I feel this is a safety issue for pedestrians or anyone wanting to access the site in any way other than by car, particularly if people are going to be drinking. Driving in and out, having driving in and out as the only option is not the safest option. There should be a way for people to walk in and out of the site safely. If we walk in and out of the site safely, if people are going to be using alcohol, and currently there isn't, even though it was specified in the plans that there should be, even before it was meant for alcohol. I would also say that I'm going to mention litter again in a minute, but as I mentioned, we did a litter pick just because we've noticed the obscene amount of litter that's left around the site. And the most shocking thing we noticed was the number of cigarette butts outside the building. And I've never seen anything like it. The ground was littered with cigarette butts. And I know that's probably not directly related to the sale of alcohol, but I would say it shows a cavalier attitude towards safety. The safety of children, and particularly given the hot conditions we had over the summer and the dry conditions, the same fire hazard posed by all these cigarette ends. And there was no safe disposal, there was no ashtray. It was clearly used as a smoking area, but there was no ashtray, there was no safe way of disposing of these cigarette butts. So again, I think that shows a cavalier attitude towards safety on the part of whoever is managing this building, that sort of really basic safety measures, whatever training they've had, basic safety measures like dealing with a fire hazard are not being put in place. On the litter, there's an absolutely obscene amount of litter left at the site. So Mr. Cronin said that he litter picks. My children are 6 and they managed to collect 3 full bags of litter from that site. Most of it was plastic bottles. It does seem that they just throw plastic bottles onto the edge of the site. I walked around there again yesterday and there were more plastic bottles and more sweet wrappers all around the edge of the site, which had not been collected. A bin has appeared there over the weekend. Until the weekend, there was no bin available for people to dispose of rubbish. It's appeared in time for the meeting. I would hope that that's going to stay now. Again, I wouldn't necessarily assume that that's the case, judging by the management's tendency to say one thing and do another. Okay, so that's safety. On the nuisance, the local community, again, I would mention the litter. So it backs onto a canal and a conservation area and onto houses, and they're not dealing responsibly with the litter problem whatsoever. I'm not sure if you're aware of the work of local residents in groups like Sutton Coldfield Litter Action Group, really trying to work to clean up our local area and clean up the canal and make it more pleasant. And we should not be battling against the likes of Sports Co, who were given the tendency by the council. We shouldn't be battling against the likes of sports clubs to deal with this. They should be dealing more responsibly with their litter. And I don't think they should be given any more concessions or permission to sell more plastic cups until they're dealing with the problem they already have. Finally, again, I know planning as such is not being considered, but the planning permission does not just, it doesn't just not give permission for it to be open in the evenings. It specifies that it will be open from 5 to 9 for changing purposes only and not social events. And it uses the words, in order to safeguard the amenities of occupiers of premises / dwellings in the vicinity, in accordance with policies. So again, that was put in place to safeguard the community, really. And the report also said that when planning permission was applied for, the applicant confirmed that the pavilion would only be used from 10 to 5 Saturday and Sunday, and during the week 5 to 9. And that was put in place to safeguard the local community. And I think it's disappointing that Mr. Cronin and Sports Co are now straight away, as soon as they have the opportunity, they're now trying to get a license to be open until 11. Again, I know it's not planning, but that's still their aim. It very much seems like saying one thing to get what they want and then saying another thing and doing another thing. I would also point out that they are already, so Mr. Cronin very much implied that the grounds was only going to be used by visiting clubs. It was going to be used by adult clubs visiting and for football related events. They're already hiring the venue out for late night parties and functions. For example, on the 3rd of September, there was a 60th birthday party held there, which went on until 11 o'clock. And it seems implausible for me that they're applying for a license and that they're already holding these parties in breach of the planning permission and in breach of the safeguards that were put in place for local residents, that they're not in future going to be aiming to sell alcohol at them, which is really not what was signed up to when Sportsco took on this lease. Okay, I think that's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Fox. We'll just check to see if we have any questions. Councillor Locke?
No questions from me, thank you. No
Councillor
questions from
Wagg?
me. No question.
Okay. Just from me, Mrs. Fox. Now, there are 4 licensing conditions, which is the framework we have to apply. That's the only framework we can apply. They were listed in the papers, but I just want to know, out of the 4, which you are really objecting, are raising as an objection to this application. The first is the prevention of crime.
Not that one.
Sorry,
Safety and the public nuisance one. So not really children and not really crime and disorder, the other 2.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. And thank you for your contribution. You'll get a chance to sum up. Actually, effectively, we move on to that now as we finish the question session. So would you just like to sum up your arguments against the application?
Yes, safety measures have not been put in place at the site. In the day-to-day operation of the site, basic safety measures like safe disposal of cigarette butts are not being taken into account, which shows a cavalier attitude towards safety, which should be dealt with before any additional concessions are made to Sportsco. There's a disgusting amount of litter which is not being dealt with, and that's not fair on the local community who are really making efforts to improve Menworth. And conditions were put in place on the use of the site for the benefit and the safeguarding of the local community. These are already being breached. I feel I have to take with a pinch of salt the assurances that the licence will only be used for football-related events, given that parties are already being held there, where I would imagine that they'd quite like to serve alcohol and make money from that. And the pedestrian, there's no pedestrian entrance. There's no pedestrian entrance to the site. It's fenced off except for a small gap through a hedge and the driveway used by cars. And yeah, I think that's everything. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So I now move back to Mr. Daly. Again, your opportunity to sum up, Mr. Daly.
Cameras on. Thank you, Chair. Just to sum up, I think as you stated there, that the 2 key licensing objectives which representations have been raised against are public nuisance and public safety. To address public safety, the club has undergone renovation. There's capacity for 100 cars at the premises. There is relevant public liability insurance and buildings insurance, which wouldn't have been granted if there was an issue around public safety there. The question of pedestrians will not be exacerbated in any way further than what currently exists. Quite often away teams are playing a vets team, not very well, we're bottom of the division. However, when we travel to away matches, we tend to travel with a few of us in the car. And as much as I'm sure the driver would like a drink, the rule is the driver doesn't drink. So there's less cars traveling as we're traveling together. That's my own personal experience. I can't guarantee it for everyone, but that is what I would see there. Away teams would very rarely walk in any case because they are away teams. In terms of the issue raised around any use that the premises has undergone or where the premises has been rented out, I would raise that 28-day rule in the Town and Country Planning Act. There may be occasions during the year where the premises actually benefits from renting out the premises for a fixed fee, which helps to support the club moving forward. You as a committee, I'm sure that you've probably heard licenses applications before where, say for a restaurant, where the sale of alcohol should be ancillary to a table meal. The bizarre thing about this application is that alcohol should be ancillary to the use as a football club. It's very difficult to put such a condition, but this is what it is. It's a football club that's struggling, that sees an opportunity to add a small amount of revenue to benefit in a broader scale and to keep it prosperous moving forward. There are various safeguards in place to make sure that the premises will adhere to the licensing conditions. Mr. Cronin spoken to you, he's the chairman, he will be the license holder, and he will have full responsibility and take responsibility for everything that goes on at the premises. In respect to the litter issue that was raised, there is litter of football grounds. Unfortunately, when young kids bring their Lucasade Sport bottles over. They're not the most responsible, and we find them all over the place at our club as well. As Mr. Cronin said, there are litter picks that go on. There are bins available. If needs be, I'm sure he is quite willing to make more bins available during the course of the day. And that is the conclusion of our submissions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daly, and Mr. Cronin and Mrs. Fox for your information to the committee today. I now ask all parties to leave the Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you very much for your attendance today and the information you've provided. So we'll now close the public part of the meeting. Colleagues, let's go straight into the private session room and make